Bodybuilding, with all its grandeur and impressive aesthetics, holds an almost hypnotic power, inspiring and transforming lives around the world. However, what lurks behind the spotlight can be terrifying. Behind the scenes, away from the cameras and applause, the reality is much darker, especially for those who take the sport to the extreme. And here, we're not just talking about professional athletes. There are people who, in pursuit of a spot on the podium, are willing to do anything without considering the consequences. Recently, I had a deep conversation with a close friend about this issue, and today I want to share with you the disturbing details of this dark side of bodybuilding. With over 2 decades immersed in this world, I can tell you that there's much more than meets the eye. If you're not part of this circle, you might have no idea what really happens behind the scenes. In this video, I'm going to expose some of the dirtiest and most shocking truths of bodybuilding, things that are rarely discussed openly. But before we dive into this hidden world, I want to ask a favor. If you value the content I produce and want to see this channel continue to grow, consider becoming a member. It's not expensive for you, but it makes a huge difference to me. And if you're new here and want to stay updated on more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and hit the notification bell. That way, YouTube will understand that this type of content deserves attention, and you won't miss any of my future videos. Now, without further ado, let's get straight to the point. The first issue we need to discuss is the dangerous practice of injecting substances directly into the muscle, an action that can have devastating consequences, including necrosis, which is the death of muscle tissue. In extreme cases, this practice can even lead to the loss of a limb. Maybe you've come across images of people displaying muscles that look like giant inflated balloons, a true deformity. But what many don't know is that this is just an extreme example of a broader problem. The truth is, in the pursuit of physical perfection, most professional athletes resort to this type of procedure to fix their bodies and achieve what they call physical harmony. In bodybuilding, this harmony is crucial. Muscles need to be in proportions that create a balanced and aesthetic look. However, the human body, most of the time, doesn't develop so perfectly. That's where these substance injections come into play, targeting smaller muscles to enlarge them and integrate them into the overall harmony of the physique. Now, imagine a substance being injected into a muscle that simply can't absorb it. The body, in response, forms a capsule around that substance, trapping it there. This, of course, can lead to serious complications such as infections, permanent deformities, and even extreme situations like the one faced by an athlete where the deterioration was so severe it resulted in the amputation of a leg. Therefore, behind the impressive body you see shining on stage, there's a much darker and more dangerous reality. The vast majority of athletes have corrections in their physiques, often achieved by methods that risk not only their aesthetics but also their health and, in extreme cases, their very lives. Now, let's move on to the second issue. Some athletes have up to 50 times more testosterone circulating in their bodies than an average person. This brings us to the second issue, which is the uncontrolled abuse of these substances. I speak from experience because I lived this reality for many years. I remember injecting these substances daily, to the point where there were no more available areas on my body for the injections because all the sites were already too painful. Bodybuilding, in this aspect, is brutal on the athlete's body. Some categories demand more, others less, but overall, the doses used are extremely high. During competition prep, it's hard to find athletes who are concerned about the consequences. Most are solely focused on the title, and to achieve that goal, they're willing to do anything. Take any substance, no matter the risks involved. There's even a particularly dangerous substance that, if improperly dosed, can be lethal or cause blindness. You might ask yourself, how is it possible that someone, knowing this substance is a poison and that it can blind or kill them, would still choose to use it? The answer is simple. It's a potent thermogenic. And that's all the athlete hears and retains. The promise of quick and effective results, ignoring the dangers. Now, let's face reality. Without the use of these drugs, it's practically impossible to reach the competitive level that bodybuilding demands. This is the dark dilemma that many athletes face. The pressure to be on top, to display that perfect physique, drives many to go beyond all limits, sacrificing health, and sometimes even life in pursuit of a title that, in the end, may cost far too much. When everyone is competing on the same level, with access to the same substances, an inevitable question arises. What would you do? Imagine that we're competing in the same championship. We have access to the same resources, the same substances. Now, I decide not to use them. What goes through your mind at that moment? You'd probably think, this is my chance to gain an advantage, to present a superior physique. And it's exactly this mindset that dominates high-level bodybuilding. The future, the consequences, health. None of that matters when the focus is on one single goal: winning. This is what high-performance sport is, a relentless pursuit of victory at any cost. The pressure to be on top, to showcase an impeccable physique, pushes athletes to this brink, where tomorrow holds no value. What matters is now, the next competition, the next victory. And so, many give themselves over to this insane race, where the finish line may mean more than a trophy. It may mean sacrificing health, the future, and in some cases, even life. What we're witnessing is a competition where there's no room for hesitation or concern about the consequences. In the end, what matters is stepping onto the stage with a physique that leaves all others behind, no matter what it takes to get there. This brings us to the third crucial point: the overload imposed on the body. Imagine a healthy body, weighing around 80 kilograms, 176 pounds. All the organs, bones, and muscles are adjusted to support that weight. Now imagine this same body starting to gain weight. 100 kilograms, 220 pounds, 120 kilograms, 264 pounds, 140 kilograms, 308 pounds. A body that functioned perfectly well at 80 kilograms, 176 pounds, now has to deal with the added pressure of carrying nearly double that weight. And we're just talking about weight here. I myself once weighed close to 120 kilograms, 264 pounds. And even back then, the difficulties were evident. Sleeping became a challenge. Putting on a simple pair of shoes was a daunting task, and even walking became a tremendous effort, leaving me constantly out of breath. My body was sending clear signals that something was wrong. Now, think about the athletes in the open category, those with the largest physiques. Their focus is on continuously gaining more muscle, more weight. But this relentless pursuit of muscle mass ends up overloading the organs, especially the heart. Imagine the heart of an athlete having to pump blood to a body weighing 140 kilograms, 308 pounds of pure muscle. In the past, we used to look at BMI, the body mass index, and think, if a person has a high BMI due to muscle volume, there's no problem. But even some specialists have started to rethink this idea. A high BMI, even if it's due to muscle mass, still represents a significant strain on the heart and other organs. And it's not uncommon for athletes to succumb to heart failure. Of course, there are many factors involved, but I'm talking here about just the tip of the iceberg, something as basic as being overweight. For the athlete, however, what matters? Winning the championship. The relentless pursuit of victory ends up obscuring the real risks. And so, these monumental bodies we see on stage carry, besides muscle, a weight that challenges the natural limits of the human body. The overload, both physical and internal, is a price many are willing to pay, but the consequences can be devastating. Let's now address the fourth issue, which involves an extremely concerning substance used by many athletes, directly linked to dementia and Alzheimer's disease. There's a substance, the most potent available for increasing muscle mass and reducing body fat. For those familiar with the field, this substance starts with TREM. Recent research shows that it contributes to the formation of beta-amyloid plaques in the brains of users. These same plaques are found in large amounts in the brains of people suffering from Alzheimer's. And what I'm mentioning here pertains to just one substance. This reminds me of a time when I was informed about a course that specifically dealt with anabolic steroids and their brain damage. In the course, several studies were presented showing the negative impact of different hormones on the brain. However, these studies analyzed drug use over a relatively short period, around 8 to 12 weeks. Now, think about the bodybuilders you know. Do they use these substances only during that short period of time? Or is the usage window much longer? But there's an even more concerning factor. These studies analyze the substances in isolation. Now, ask yourself, do you know any athlete who uses only one substance in isolation? The answer is no. The reality is that athletes generally use multiple substances combined and for a long period. And this practice intensifies the risks even more. At the end of the course, the conclusion was alarming. We have no idea what's happening to these athletes' brains. We know the effects are negative, but the real extent of the damage is incalculable. And we're not just talking about physical damage. The substance mentioned, the most potent one, is strongly associated with extreme psychological symptoms. Aggressiveness, impulsivity, antisocial behavior. All of this can be exacerbated by the continuous use of this drug. And the impact is so severe that even one of the world's top athletes today has publicly declared that he refuses to use this substance, fully aware of the risks it poses. This is the grim reality that many are unaware of, but it needs to be brought to light. The side effects aren't limited to the physical. The psychological toll is also high, and the damage can be irreversible. Besides all the physical and mental risks, there's another factor that worsens the situation: psychological dependence. Many athletes, after achieving that ideal physique, simply can't stop. They deeply identify with the body they've built, with the strength and appearance that these muscles bring. Now imagine telling someone they have to give that up. It's like asking them to abandon an essential part of who they are. The reality is that few people can make that break. In fact, most can't. What many don't realize is that this dependence goes beyond the physical. It intensely affects the mind, creating an almost uncontrollable need to maintain a body standard that's impossible to sustain without continuous use of these substances. This issue of psychological dependence intertwines with another critical point: the devastating impact of these substances on sleep. Every day, science shows us that sleep is fundamental, not just for our physical health, but also for our mental health. However, these substances destroy the quality of athletes' sleep, creating a vicious cycle. Today, you have no idea how much I value my sleep. I adopt a series of practices to ensure good sleep hygiene, doing everything I can to optimize every minute of rest. And on top of that, I even use supplements and other strategies to maximize my sleep. But imagine being trapped in a situation where even these practices aren't enough, where the chemistry in your body simply doesn't allow you to get the necessary rest. Sleep, which should be a time for recovery and renewal, becomes another battleground where the body fights against the side effects of the drugs. And it's exactly this dependence that creates an invisible prison. The athlete is trapped between the desire to maintain their appearance and the devastating cost it has on their health. What should be a journey in pursuit of health and strength turns into a dangerous and exhausting cycle that few can break. In the end, what are these athletes seeking? The answer seems obvious: victory, recognition, the title. But at what cost? The price is a life of constant struggle against the body's and mind's own limits, a struggle that often has no winners. We've reached the fifth issue that plagues athletes, especially during the competition prep phase. During this period, the athlete completely disconnects from everyday life, diving headfirst into the goal of achieving physical perfection, to the point where the world around them simply ceases to exist. Once again, I'm talking about something I've discussed in depth and made several notes on with my friend, someone who is also immersed in this universe. During this intense preparation phase, the focus on the competition is so absolute that everything else becomes secondary. Family, friends, work, all of it takes a back seat. Now, outside this intense period, an athlete's social life may seem a bit more normal. But what about the psychological effects of the substances I mentioned earlier? Do you really believe they have a normal social life? The answer is a resounding no. But for them, this disconnection has become the norm. They've grown accustomed to this reality and, in a way, even accept it as part of the process. What matters above all is the competition. The bodybuilder lives for it, and because of it, no matter the cost. This disconnection from everyday life is, in large part, what allows the athlete to endure the physical and mental sacrifices that high-performance sports demand. But it's also what contributes to isolation, loneliness, and often to the continuation of using these dangerous substances. It's a cycle that feeds itself, where each victory reinforces the need to continue down this path, regardless of the warning signs the body and mind might be sending. And in the end, what's left? A title, a moment of glory, but also a trail of destruction that may never be repaired. The commitment is so extreme that any aspect of life not related to competition is neglected. Friendships, relationships, even the most basic needs like mental health care are put on the back burner. Athletes are willing to sacrifice everything from social interaction to their own sanity to achieve a single goal: victory. This mindset is a trap, an invisible prison that isolates them from the world while they chase an ideal that always seems just out of reach. What should be a balanced journey of self-discovery and growth turns into an obsession that consumes every aspect of the athlete's life. And in the end, what remains is an existence shaped by obsession, where the competition is the only beacon guiding every step, while the rest of the world fades into the mist. The sixth problem in bodybuilding is perhaps one of the most dangerous: extreme dehydration. This practice is adopted to ensure the athlete presents the driest and most defined physique possible on competition day. However, this process has cost the lives of numerous athletes over the years. To understand why, it's important to know that just beneath our skin is a layer called subcutaneous tissue, where a significant amount of water is stored. Below this layer are the muscles. To make the athlete's physique appear as sculpted as possible, it is essential to eliminate this water retention in the subcutaneous tissue, and this is where dehydration comes in. During preparation, many athletes subject their bodies to rigorous dehydration processes. Back in the 1980s, the indiscriminate use of diuretics was common, substances that force the body to eliminate excess water. This abuse led to the deaths of several athletes, whose bodies simply could not withstand the extreme stress of dehydration. Although this practice is less common today, and the use of diuretics has decreased, dehydration continues to be an integral part of the final stages for many bodybuilders. As the competition approaches, they keep their bodies with minimal water under the skin, aiming to maximize muscle definition. However, this practice does not come without consequences. Even with reduced use of diuretics, drastically dehydrating the body remains an extremely aggressive process. The impact on the body is widespread, affecting everything from cardiovascular function to electrolyte balance, potentially leading to life-threatening situations. All of this for one goal: the perfect appearance on stage for a few minutes of display. This quest for extreme definition leads many athletes to ignore the warning signs their bodies send, putting their health and lives at risk to achieve an ideal that, in the end, can come at a very high cost. In the world of bodybuilding, the obsession with achieving the perfect appearance leads to extreme measures that can severely compromise health. Dehydration is just one of the many practices reflecting the sacrifices made in the name of competition, where the desire to stand out on stage outweighs the instinct to preserve one's own body. The process of dehydration is undoubtedly one of the riskiest tactics, and the history of bodybuilding is filled with tragic examples that remind us of the high price that can be paid for those minutes of glory. The seventh issue we need to discuss is one of the darkest: the early death of athletes. When investigating the deaths of bodybuilders, many point directly to the use of anabolic steroids as the main cause. However, is that the only explanation? It's important to consider that death may be deeply related to the extreme overload these athletes impose on their bodies. What happens when you push the body to such an extreme limit? At some point, the bill comes due, and the consequences can be fatal. Other high-performance sports also present risks associated with the extreme stress placed on the body, and serious problems can arise as a result. But what I am presenting is a specific view of bodybuilding, a field I know well from having lived these experiences up close. In bodybuilding, the pressure to achieve a perfect physique leads many athletes to push limits that other sports may not demand. In the world of bodybuilding, the sacrifice of the body goes beyond the normal. The use of anabolic steroids and other substances, combined with the pressure to achieve physical perfection, creates an explosive mix that can have devastating effects. The overload on the body is not only physical, but can also profoundly affect the cardiovascular system, metabolism, and other vital organs. When the body is subjected to these extreme conditions for extended periods, the risk of multiple organ failure and other serious complications increases exponentially. While the death of athletes can be attributed to various factors, the cumulative impact of physical and chemical stress cannot be ignored. Bodybuilding, with its obsessive focus on an ideal physique, exposes athletes to a heightened risk often overlooked by those outside this world. The harsh reality is that the cost of pursuing perfection on stage can be tragically high. As someone who has experienced this world up close, I can affirm that the risks are real and the athlete's health is constantly in jeopardy. In the end, what seems like a quest for excellence can turn into a fight for survival, with consequences that are often irreversible.